Ken Blackwell has spent a lot of his life trying to make government remember that it is your money. Ken has done outstanding service as mayor of Cincinnati, as state treasurer and secretary of state for the state of Ohio, and as a national leader for the taxpayers. We know him especially well as one of the most valuable members of the board of directors of National Taxpayers Union. A wonderful colleague who always brings good ideas, wisdom, good judgment to our board meetings. And you can read his bio in your book and the many good causes and good organizations he's involved with. We welcome Ken Blackwell now as our first speaker. Please go right ahead and enjoy yourself.
Thank you, David, for your introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, in David's introduction, he indicated that I was formerly the mayor of Cincinnati. I want to set the historical record straight. I was mayor of Cincinnati after Jerry Springer. So that only goes to prove that sometimes the sublime does follow the ridiculous. I thought that I would frame the challenge before us historically. Since the recordings and observations of Aristotle, there's been a historical conflict between the state and the individual, between individual liberty and the organized power of the state. A growth in state power correspondingly results in a reduction of individual liberty and the moral responsibility that we as free individuals have to do the right thing. The second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence actually lays out our battle cry. We hold these truths to be self-evident, which John Funn would tell you that that's a very simple way of saying any idiot should be able to get this. That we're endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. Now, it should set it up this way, that our rights, as many of my colleagues have told many other audiences, are not grants from government, but gifts from God. And they're given to us in an order of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is very difficult to pursue liberty if you're dead. And it's very difficult to pursue happiness if you're enslaved by the runaway power of the state. For those of you who were in doubt as to whether or not that tension and that conflict of worldviews was still in play and current, the February 16th edition of Newsweek magazine should have put your doubt to rest. In bold print for you and all of our children to read, the headline read, "We are all socialists now." We are all socialists now. I don't know about you, but I'd be damned if I'm a socialist. And the challenge is real. I don't think that we should understand when this conflict and when the struggle was crystallized. It wasn't crystallized last week. It started to be crystallized in the last year of the Bush administration. The parallels to the 1920s and the 1930s are remarkable. Republican President Calvin Coolidge was a staunch conservative, presiding over a robust economy in the roaring 20s. Republican President Herbert Hoover was a moderate who tried government intervention in the face of the economic downturn of 1929. And I might add, with disastrous results. But his intervention opened the door to FDR's rapid expansion of government intervention in our lives and government's size, with equally disastrous results. It wasn't until the end of the Great Depression, or the Great Depression didn't end until there was the intervention of the greatest military conflict in world history, and that was World War II. I would suggest to you that just like Coolidge, Ronald Reagan was a believer in freedom and in letting the economy and decisions of free individuals direct the growth and expansion of our economy. Just like Hoover, George Bush was a moderate who opened the door with government expansion, government bailouts, to set the stage for Barack Obama. The issue is very clear to me. The issue is whether or not we will sit down, as they used to say, sit on our hands, sit on our cans, and ask a stupid question, what can we do? Well, it is clear what we can do. It is spontaneous, it is grassroots up, and it is a staunch defense of our individual liberties. The Tea Parties are a manifestation of that intrinsic desire of individuals to be free of domination of the state. Let me be clear. You will hear a lot of analysis, a lot of opining, but there are some basic truths that I want to leave you with that came out of a simple family of moderate means. In this case, it happened to be my family. My Uncle Albert used to say that doomsday is that day you get all of the government that you pay for. And I would suggest to you that we're getting ready to stare doomsday in the face. My grandmother, who was a maid for 4 families in the Cincinnati area, used to bring me and my brother books given to her by the families for whom she worked. And by age 9, I became a literary authority on the works of Lewis Carroll. And one of my favorite scenes in Through the Looking Glass, Alice in Wonderland, was when the Mad Hatter and his friends were sitting at a long banquet table with a beautiful satin tablecloth. And they had made messes in front of themselves. And instead of cleaning up the mess, they would move down the table to a clean spot to make another mess. That is exactly the way government works. Government is a living example of the Mad Hatter syndrome. My dad, who was a boxing fanatic, as Bridget would tell you from stories that she's heard me tell, he enrolled me in the Golden Glove amateur boxing matches when I was 15 years old. I won my first 4 bouts with relative ease. 5th bout, I got hit so hard in the nose that I had to go home and tell my dad, who was a blue-collar meat packer, that I was going to find a more scholarly career to pursue. And I stayed away from boxing arenas until I was a freshman in college when Father E.J. O'Connor, a 72-year-old Jesuit, former Marine, asked me and a Jewish friend of mine, Benji Swartz, if we could go to the old Golden Glove vouchers with him. We went, we watched Tim Boucher, 11th bout, young boy from the western side of Cincinnati, as Chris Finney would tell you. He made the sign of the cross. Benji, who was Jewish, elbowed Father and said, Father, what's the significance of that? Father said, son, it's very important, but it ain't enough if he can't fight. That's my message. It is not enough for us to do the analysis. It's not enough for us to do hand-wringing. It's not enough for us to ask the question, what's to be done? The obligation that we have as free men and free women is to take a stand, and to take a stand now. Ladies and gentlemen, for 232 years, America has been the beacon of freedom for all the world over. We are the most diverse democracy in all of human history, bar none. There are people who died to get to our shores. The question is whether or not we understand that second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence, which is, in fact, the essence of who we are as a people. Great nations are not the products of great governments. Great nations are the products of good people doing great things together. Let's take a stand. Let's understand that it is our fidelity to freedom that will determine whether America, in its third decade, and in its third century, has another century of freedom that all the world over can marvel, emulate, and desire to achieve. NTU is on the front lines with you. NTU is not standing around cursing the darkness. NTU understands that all of you, all of us, are able to hold our candles. And together, we in fact will rush the darkness of these times and bring light to the third century of American history. Thank you for NTU, but more importantly, thank you for what you do. And I look forward to hearing my good friend, Steve Moore, who has not only been a carrier of the light, but he has been a lamplighter intellectually and in terms of his personal commitment and activity across this nation. Thank you for all you do.